Welcome back to the Mech Tech. Today we have an upgrade guide for you for Modern Horizons 3 featuring creative energy. Helmed by Satya Aetherflux Genius. So Satya is a 3/5 with Menace and Haste. They cost 4 mana, including 1 generic and Jeskai. So whenever they attack, you're going to gain a little bit of energy, and you're going to create a tapped and attacking copy of another creature you control. Has to be an actual creature, can't be a token copy already itself. And then at your end step, you could pay energy equal to that creature's mana cost, and if you do, you get to keep it, otherwise you have to sacrifice it. We're pretty okay with sacrificing the creatures if we have to, but there are a couple key ones that kind of make sense to keep around. As always, we're going to go ahead and cut out 10 cards that didn't quite make the cut, and then add in 10 new ones. Starting off with the Aether Squall Ancient. It's really being cut just due to cost. I think as an energy generator, it's pretty decent, but it is 7 mana. We don't have a ton of ramp in this deck. We have a couple alternate ways of kind of casting things, but, you know, all in all, I think that it's an okay cut to make. So at your upkeep, you would generate 3 energy. You could pay 8 energy at sorcery speed to bounce the rest of the creatures on the field, which includes your own, unfortunately. And there's also kind of another reason why he got cut. I think a 6/6 for 7, even with flying, is just kind of okay. The energy generation is good, but we have ways of generating energy outside of our upkeep. So I think it's okay to get rid of him. Angel of Invention. This is a 5-cost 2/1 with Flying, Vigilance, and Lifelink, as well as Fabricate 2. So they're either coming in with 2 extra 1/1 counters on them, making them a 4/3, or they're coming in with 2 little servos. For this deck, I'd probably go the servo route if I were to keep them. They also act as a generic lord, so all of your other creatures get +1/+1. I feel like it's asking a lot to pay 5 mana for this. It is a bit of keyword soup. It works kind of okay with a couple of our other cards, but it's not energy focused, and I kind of wish it were. Burnished Heart, also just not making that cut. Burnished Heart is generically good. It's one of those cards you can kind of slot into any deck and be like, yeah, you kind of fit here, you're going to ramp me a little bit. But that being said, I just don't feel like it's doing enough in this deck to warrant staying, so it's going to go. Coalition Relic. So this is a 3-cost mana rock. For those of you that have been with me for a while, you know I really don't like 3-cost mana rocks, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this. But it does tap for any color, so like decent color fixing. It could also get charge counters on it, and if I had a ton of proliferation support, it'd probably get to stay. That being said, this deck just doesn't run enough of it. So the reason we would want to run proliferation support in this deck is because the energy we use is in the form of counters. So they are proliferatable, which is pretty handy, but you know, it's just not going to happen here. Coveted Jewel follows up that Coalition Relic. It is a 6-cost mana rock that draws you 3 cards when it enters the battlefield, taps for 3 mana, and you're like, Mech, are you crazy? That card sounds great. But it also puts a huge target on your back. Not just because I feel like it's good value, but also because if an opponent attacks you and they get through your defenses you don't block, they get to steal it, draw the cards, all that stuff. So it's sort of like the monarchy in that sense, right? You have it, everyone else wants it, and all they have to do to get it is to hit ya. Filigree Racer follows up that jewel. It is a 4-cost 5/5 vehicle. When it enters the battlefield, you do gain some energy, 4 of it to be precise. It has a crew value of 1, so pretty easy for any of your creatures to really crew this thing. When it attacks, you could pay 2 energy and give an instant or sorcery from your grave jumpstart. We have like 7 instant or sorceries in this deck total. So there's a high likelihood that you're just gonna miss, right? You're gonna fail to find. There's no valid targets. And so for that reason, I'm gonna cut it. Grenzo Havoc Razor. So this is a 2-cost 2/2. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you get to either goad a creature that they control, which is pretty decent, don't get me wrong. I'm warming up to goad. I've been kind of anti-goad in the past, but like, it's not bad. Still not my like personal cup of tea, but you know, it's neither here nor there. If you don't want to do that, you could impulse draw off the top of their deck and cast those spells with mana of any color, which, not a bad effect. But again, it's not what this deck's doing, and it feels weird that they included him in here by default. Legion Loyalty is going to follow up Grenzo. It's an 8-cost enchantment, which is already a little pricey. The effect kind of justifies it, right? It gives all of your creatures Myriad. That's cool. It's very, you know, beneficial specifically in Commander. But 8 mana that does nothing if you don't already have a decent field that can attack. So for that reason, we're going to let it go. Skyclave Apparition is a single target removal, which doesn't do well in Commander. Don't get me wrong, you want to have the ability to do these sort of single target, get rid of that a little bit in Commander, right, for those big problems. But you want to be able to do those at instant speed, and this is a creature. So whenever it ETBs, you're going to exile something that's cheap, right, it has to be 4 mana or less. And should they get rid of your 2/2, not very difficult to do, they at least get an illusion back, right? So they're highly incentivized to remove this creature. Getting rid of creatures is much easier than getting rid of, say, like an enchantment or even an artifact in Commander. So I'm gonna cut it. And last, but certainly not least, is the sad robot himself, Solemn Simulacrum. Much like the Burnished Heart, just kind of generically good in Commander, could go into any deck. They do ramp you a little bit. When they die, they do draw you a card. So they're not bad, but they're just not good enough to justify sticking around. They're not really feeding into the specific energy strategy that we're going for. So, yeah. Let's move into the cards that didn't quite, that did measure up, as a matter of fact. We'll start off with Guide of Souls is our first edition, and for 1 white mana you get a 1/2 that whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control is going to gain you both life and energy. We love it. Whenever you attack, you get pay 3 energy to give an attacking creature 2 more power, permanently in the form of +1/+1 counters, as well as a flying counter, allowing them to evade all of your opponent's little land boys. So, super strong. It's sitting around like the $3 to like $4 mark right now, depending on like which version of it you pick up and like where you're getting it from. But solid ad. Brotherhood Scribe is going to follow up that guide. Probably didn't know it. But they have, they're from Fallout. They have Metalcraft. You can tap them to gain energy, and whenever you gain 1 or more energy during your turn, all of your creatures get +1/+1. Phenomenal. Love it. Following up the Scribe, we have the Panharmonicon. So, 4-cost artifact. Solder, you know you love it. It's doubling all of your ETB triggers for your creatures and your artifacts, which is most of what this deck is. Fabrication Module is going to follow up that Panharmonicon. So 3 energy. Or not 3 energy. My bad. 3 mana. We're paying for our cards. We're not cheaters. But whenever you gain 1 or more energy, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on one of your creatures. And you could, if you had an extra mana just lying around, pay 4 mana to tap it and gain energy. But it's really here for that first effect. The second effect is nice just because, you know, hey, I got some mana lying around. May as well. Up next, we have Aether Revolt. So Aether Revolt is a new enchantment for 4 mana. So it has the Revolt mechanic, which is pretty good in Commander. We tend to make a lot of treasures or clues or whatever and sack them, so we're going to get this pretty often. But as long as a permanent we control has left the field this turn, if we have a source that would deal non-combat damage to an opponent, or a permanent that they control, it's going to do that much +2, right? So we're tacking on extra damage. And whenever you get 1 or more energy, Aether Revolt itself is going to deal that much damage to any target we want. We're going to be pinging our opponents for damage. We're going to be pinging their creatures, removing them on the spot. This is repeatable, potentially single source. This is repeatable single target removal, as well as possibly, if we have enough energy kind of flow happening, just player removal, get them out of here. Assault Dominator is going to follow that up. They are from the Fallout Precon, but they're going to give us a 2/2 for 2. Whenever they enter the battlefield, they're also going to give us 2 energy, so we're making some value here. Whenever one of our many artifact creatures attack, we can pay 1 energy to either give it a +1/+1 counter, a first strike counter, or a trample counter. And this is going to trigger per artifact creature that attacks. So, you know, it's only going to trigger once for each of them, but like, it's very strong. Automated Assembly Line is going to follow up that Dominator. This is another low to the ground in terms of cost thing. So for 2 mana, we're going to get an artifact. With whenever 1 or more artifact creatures we control deal damage to an opponent, we're going to gain 1 energy. Already pretty good, right? We have a number of artifact creatures, you know, in the form of servos, thopters, what have you, as well as some that are just like already like proper, nice, large artifact creatures in our deck. But we could also pay 3 energy to create a 3/3 robot artifact creature. They do come into play tapped, but that's fine. We don't mind at all. Metastic Evangel is going to follow that up. This is another 2-coster. Our 2-cost slot is actually like pretty full in this deck. So we're not going to have any real trouble kind of like having these early plays that allow us to kind of be aggressive and take control of the match. But whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under our control, we are going to proliferate. We have tons of creatures in the deck in addition to all of the various artifacts and whatnot. Proliferating is going to let us up those counters we're passing out. It's also going to let us, you know, increase the amount of energy we have just lying around. Super solid. Emissary of Soulfire follows that up when they enter the battlefield. As a 1/4, they're going to give us 3 energy. We can also pay 2 energy to pass out an Exalted counter onto a target creature. We could do so at sorcery speed. So especially once we have creatures that are kind of like, I have a lot of power on just this one creature. It has trample or it has flying right away to kind of like force it through. Passing out a bunch of Exalted counters among all of our creatures is super strong. And I believe, you know, double check me on this. Let me know in the comments down below. You could proliferate those Exalted counters. And then you could have creatures that have like 5 instances of Exalted, and each of them is going to trigger for you. Another cheap 2-coster here for you. We have the Riddle Gate Gargoyle. So for 2 mana, we get a flying 2/2. Already pretty happy with that. They are an artifact creature as well, which is also vital to our strategy. Whenever they enter the battlefield, we're going to gain 3 energy. Whenever we attack, we could pay 2 and give a creature lifelink for the turn. So again, with our creatures kind of growing bigger over time and whatnot, you know, the ability to give any of them lifelink is pretty vital to kind of keep our life high so we can swing more freely. But we also have a couple things in the deck that kind of care about us gaining life. It's definitely not a main strategy, but the fact that, like, we're able to potentially pass it out is a nice little bonus. Yeah, honorable mentions. Let's get to this real quick. So I didn't add a crazy number of them. There's any number of them you could add that, you know, oh, I'm going to double up your tokens, right? Tons of those in white. Oh, I'm going to make it so you proliferate more, right? Tons of that in blue. And they're good. You know, I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, you shouldn't add those. No, they're great. If you have them, add them. The ones that I did add into honorable mentions, there's only 6 of them. But they're a little more niche. So starting off, we have Karn the Great Creator. He does shut off quite a bit of things, right? He's going to stop a lot of your opponent's mana rocks and all that jazz. Not why he's here. He's here for that -2 ability that's going to let you grab your Gunti Aether's Heart that you've exiled back to your hand and recast it and take more extra turns. Little niche, but, you know, still good. We're also adding in, as an honorable mention, Dr. Madison Lee. We are casting a lot of artifacts. It's a good way to gain energy. The fact that they can pass out Trample is relevant. The fact that they let you draw cards is relevant. And the fact that they could let you return an artifact card from your grave to the battlefield tapped, relevant. Dreamtide Whale is interesting. So it has Vanishing 2, but it is a 7/5 for 3 mana. And whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, we get to proliferate. So we're going to up those vanishing counters, and also up our energy counters and any other counters we passed out. I just didn't really feel like I had room for it. If I built the deck from scratch, I might include it just because it is like a nice sort of way to benefit and gain proliferation from our opponents playing the game. And Soul Artifact is another kind of way to do what we were talking about, which is to have an artifact become a creature. So we would put it onto Gunti Aether's Heart, create the copy with our commander. Legend Rule does kind of bog us down a little bit, but, you know, there are ways to handle that. And we never touch the lands in these decks. I don't feel like upgrading your lands is all that interesting. But we did have, as honorable mentions, both Inventor's Fair, which is a nice way to, 1, kind of gain its life, 2, eventually let us tutor up an artifact to our hand. Yeah, to our hand. As well as Karn's Bastion, just for the proliferation effect. But yeah, those are the deck upgrade guides. Hopefully you enjoyed them. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the, hey, I'm live on camera and I'm putting cards probably right here. What deck do you want to see upgraded next from Modern Horizons 3? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to hang out and discuss Magic and tabletop games in general, go ahead and join the Discord. There are links in the description. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, do all the algorithm things for me. It's really helpful. I am trying to grow this channel. But until next time, have a good one. Did I keep you in the deck? Fucking did.